Hello and welcome to the Fedora Files. I'm Gregory Fedora, and with me today is Andrew and Lee of the Frederick Pedalers Club, right? Pedalers Bicycle. I'm going to say it all wrong. I'll say it. So I'm going to just let you say, what is your club?
So we are the Frederick Pedalers Bicycle Club. And we've been here in Frederick for 50 years.
Wow.
Organizing bicycle rides, encouraging cyclists to get out on the road, enjoy the scenery, and be safe while they're doing it.
There you go. So how many members do you guys have?
We are currently at 190 members.
Whoa, that is awesome. And how often do you guys meet up and do rides together?
Well, we have at the moment we have two regularly scheduled rides. So there's every Wednesday evening we have a ride that leaves out of Utica Park at 6 o'clock, does anywhere from 20 to 30 miles, and average speeds ranging anywhere probably between 12 and 17 miles an hour, depending on what sort of rabbits are out there at the top end. And then there's also another ride which goes all year round out of Monocacy Middle School on Sundays. And so in the winter, when it's a little colder out, we'll tend to start at 11:30 on Sunday morning. And then the rest of the year, when it's either hotter in the afternoon or it's nice at 9:30 in the morning, that's when Kathy Dollar leads the ride out of there every week on Sunday. And then in between, there's a variety of other rides that get organized. So we always do a ride in the spring, 100 kilometers, and then occasionally we'll do a 100-mile one too, depending on how much interest there is in the longer ride. We also do a fall club ride, similar distances, 100 kilometers or 100 miles. Are there any others you think of, Lee?
There's several random rides on weekends through the year, depending on how many ride leaders and what the interests are. So,
right. And typically,
on our webpage, we have a calendar which will kind of advertise the rides as they come up.
Right. And the other thing is, of course, because we're a cycling club, we always associate any meetings with cycling. So we have an annual meeting for kind of business, but of course, we like to have a ride before that. So that's normally in the spring. We'll have an organized ride that normally goes around the south end of the county out of Frederick, and then we'll have our business meeting afterwards and a potluck. And then we have a picnic in the summer in July, typically up at Utica Park. And again, we'll have rides before the picnic, and then we socialize at the picnic after the ride.
Yeah, you got to work up your appetite by going on a ride.
Exactly, and you get thirsty too sometimes. Yeah. It's not completely unheard of for somebody's ride will end up at one of the brew pubs around town.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably where my ride would end up.
Right. And there's also quite a lot of other rides around the area, not that we necessarily organize, but that our club members are either involved in or participate in, such as just last weekend was the Tour de Frederick, which is a big fundraiser for the Boys and Girls Club in town. And we must have had, I don't know, I guess at least a dozen members of the club who were out there riding together on that ride. And they have a lot of different distances there, 20 miles, 30 miles, 60 miles, 100 miles.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's impressive. Now, you said this has been around for 50 years. Now, who started the club? Obviously, you guys didn't start it.
No, because we're so young. We couldn't possibly.
Yes. Yeah. Like what I'm saying, there's no way you were the start. Like you joined like 5-10 years ago. And but how did you know the history of how it started, or was it?
Yeah, the club started back in the late 60s. This came about, I believe it was the Eisenhower administration that started a health campaign for people. Like when we were growing up in high school, we were doing exercise and stuff. This kind of came out of that. The Frederick Health Group started riding bikes back in the 60s, and it turned into a organization that had several organized rides, and it all started from that. And then in 1973, they actually incorporated as an official organization.
Okay. Cool. Now, obviously, you guys ride a lot. What is the longest ride you get? Both, it'll go to both of you, like that you guys have done by yourselves, but also with the club.
So I've probably done fewer of these longer rides than Lee. I think the longest ride I ever did in a single day was the 75-mile, three-quarter century Civil War century, which was last September, probably. And I haven't done any multi-day rides, but Lee's done a couple of these rides where you go many miles, many consecutive days.
Yeah, I've ridden trail rides like Pine Creek up in Pennsylvania, or the Sino Canal or the Gap, where you'll ride 2 or 3 days to cover the Gap, for example. And the Gap is roughly 130 miles.
Oh, wow.
Pine Creek is roughly 70 miles each way. So you'll ride one way, spend the night, and turn around and come back the next day. But those are my longest rides.
Right.
Okay.
We're I would say by no means the long haul guys in the club. There's we're officers in the club, but there's more, I wouldn't say serious riders, but riders who do serious distances. There's for instance, there's a fellow named Bill Smith who's been active in the cycling community here since the 80s. And he kind of has a reputation for, if it's not 100 miles, it's not worth me going. He does shorter rides than that. We rode with him this weekend on the Tour de Frederick in the 100 kilometers. But he's pretty notorious for going out and doing 100 miles at a time. He typically organizes that Pine Creek ride. And then there have been, she doesn't no longer lives here in Frederick, but there was a club member a while back, Lynn, who had ridden across the country. So she did a women's organized, women only ride across the country a few years ago.
Wow.
That's a lot of miles.
Yeah, that's a ton. Like, that's, in my mind, that's like, I don't know if I could I don't know if I could make it out of Maryland. Like, on like, I'd probably be like, I tried. And just but I used to do trails like on mountain bikes, but it was never like 30, 40 miles. It was very short distances, like maybe like 10 miles tops on these trails. But but when she's telling me about like what you guys did, like Lisa, when she told me about you guys, I was like, man, that's pretty cool that you guys are consistently doing this. So what got you interested in cycling? Like,
I think we all grew up riding bikes, but then as we got a little bit older, for me at least, it was a way to get out and enjoy the countryside and get some exercise, but not to really tear yourself up trying to run or doing something more strenuous. So biking was a real nice medium to get out and do that exercise, get some aerobic exercise in, and see some of the countryside.
Right, yeah, and I would agree. I think it's for me, it's an enjoyable form of exercise. So there's certain kinds of exercise, like I go jogging, which I think is good for me, but it's not particularly fun or enjoyable. Whereas bike riding, especially when you're riding with the club, it's there's a pretty significant social component to it as well. So when you're riding in a group, and as long as you're not huffing and puffing up a hill, then it's pretty common that people will be chatting to each other while they're riding along. And to me, that's an aspect of it, which is being in the club makes it different and more valuable than just going out your back door and riding your bike for exercise, or people who sit on their trainer in the basement and just ride and spin away just to get some exercise. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because you kind of mentioned how when you were younger, you would go out and ride your bikes. And I did that all the time. Like, my friends and I would be like, hey, let's go for a bike ride. Yeah. And it'd be like 4 or 5 of us, and we'd go, and we'd go for hours. And like, I have no idea how many miles. I mean, I know we'd like ride over to this museum, go hang out there, then ride here, ride there. And like in the summer, and then it's interesting that kids love to do that. Right. But then as we get older, we kind of like don't do that. And then this is kind of cool. It's like bringing that back where it's like, hey, let's get our friends together and go ride. And you got like 190 plus friends that want to go ride. And that's kind of a cool, like, it's nostalgic in a way, I guess. Like, it brings back for me at least, like when you're telling me about it, it's like it brings back that thought of going out with my buddies just to ride. And you're not thinking about that it's good for you. You're having fun.
Right. You're doing it for fun. That absolutely. I mean, that was just like Lee said, I rode bike as a kid which is fun. You rode it to go places and see your friends and do stuff. And then you have your own kids and you do some bike riding with them, but you're not really going very far. And then, once the kids were either older or they've left, yeah, getting back on the bike again and going out and riding up and down the hills here, particularly the downhill is, yeah, it is. It's like being a kid again. You're kind of just out roaming around, enjoying the countryside. And then Frederick is particularly good for getting out and about. I mean, once you get out of town, the roads are largely just not very busy, and it's a great environment for bike riding.
And the scenery is great. Like you got like the mountains around you and the farmland, and it's just, I mean, it's really pretty area. Like if people look around and actually pay attention what's around them, oftentimes they're just like flying by and they don't think about it. But like when you really look, it's like in biking, you're going to be doing that. Like
right. And biking is a good speed for that. So I know for me, I mean, I like hiking, but it's a lot slower, right? So you can pay a lot more attention if you want to the finer details on the trees or the ground around you. But biking has the benefit of you can still see those details, but you're covering a lot more space. So you can cover some more interesting territory during a bike ride than you would during a hike. And certainly you see things that you don't see when you're just buzzing by in the car.
Oh, very true. Very true. So what is your favorite area to ride in this area, like that you enjoy?
Most of our riding is done north of Frederick and north, basically all the way up into Gettysburg. And unless you want to do some serious hill climbing, we kind of stay to the east of Route 15. When you cross over Route 15, you start encountering a few more hills. So we'll stay east of Route 15. And typically Frederick County, once you move over into Carroll County, we start getting quite a bit hillier. So there's kind of a rectangle in that area that we do most of our riding in. And then every once in a while we'll go south or take a trail ride for a change of scenery. But most of our rides are in that region.
Okay, nice.
It's pretty easy to get out there and ride anywhere from 10 miles to 50 miles and not cover any of the same territory. And if you ride up into Pennsylvania around Gettysburg and in through that area, you can certainly easily get a 100-mile ride in without doubling over anything you've been on.
Oh, wow. So now you mentioned you have a website and page. What is that? So if people wanted to check you guys out or meet up and would like to try going on a ride with you, where can they look this up and where to go?
Frederick Pedalers.
.org.
And the website includes our calendar, includes how you join as a member. People who do join as members, we have an app called Ride with GPS, which is kind of a computerized app that you can put on either your phone or on your computer on your bike and use that for directions or for ideas on what routes you might take. So it's quite a bit of information on our website about rides and what's coming up for us.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Yep. Yeah. And we also have a little section that covers other things going on in the area, cycling wise, that aren't necessarily our club activities, but other rides, for instance, that are going on around the area that people might be interested. Because a lot of times people will do, for instance, in addition to the Tour de Frederick, they'll do these other rides that are either out of Baltimore or they'll go over. Some people like the flats, and they'll go over to Eastern Maryland and do a ride out there. There's something called the Seagull Century, which is out around Salisbury, or maybe they go ride in Delaware. If people like a little more hilly stuff, they'll go down and do these rides in Virginia, which there's organized rides down there too. So there's a lot in the area. And being in the club, you hear about these things from the other members and you get those connections.
Oh, very cool.
Plus you find other members who are interested in it as well. So if you pick one of those rides, more than likely you can find a partner to go down with you.
Right.
Oh yeah.
To ride along for the day.
Yeah. You get your friend to go bike riding with. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. Like that, and that's what it's all about. It's like building these relationships and having fun and doing something you guys love. And that's something a lot of people just don't really do. They're like,
right.
They don't.
And it's also a good excuse to eat too. So if you then I think you burn quite a lot of calories riding. So you go 20, 30 miles and you definitely need to stop and do some eating, right? And if you go 20 miles, then you need to eat again. So it's There's no reason not to eat when you're out bike riding.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, you could probably work on something with like some of the restaurants in the area. Do a bike and deli, or I don't know. Like I was gonna say you could do like one of those pub crawls, but that would probably not be smart to do while riding a bike.
No,
and we at times organize a Wednesday ride, which would always start and finish at a restaurant somewhere in Frederick County. So it was kind of an afternoon ride, and then finish up with late lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And there is actually an organization called Bikes and Beers who I think it's a national organization, but they organize rides which tie those two together. So they always provide some sort of they must partner with somebody who provides the beer at the end of the ride.
Yeah, you need it at the end, not while.
Yeah.
You want to wait that. That's awesome. Now I know that you both said that you actually have your ride today, right? Or you have a meeting today.
So
right. Yes. So I don't want to keep you too long because I know we're getting close to that time. And if someone has not ridden in a long time but want to, what would you say to encourage them to come check you guys out or just get back to riding?
One thing unique about our organization, there's a lot of different bike clubs in the area. Baltimore has a large bike club, and Potomac has a large bike club, but we pride ourselves in never leaving a rider behind. So anybody who wants to come out for the first time, they should never be nervous or intimidated about being left behind, because our motto is always to find somebody to partner up with and ride along with any rider who comes along. So that kind of makes it a little bit more friendly for somebody who hasn't been out in quite some time, or a little bit nervous when they hear about, riding 30 miles. Maybe you only ride 10 miles with us.
Right.
But, we always have somebody who's going to ride along with you, and you're not going to get left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's particularly true on the Sunday ride. So the Sunday ride around just north of town is definitely fits in that category. So that would be a great place for somebody who wanted to find out what the club was like and start riding. If they, like you say, if they think 30 miles seems like a really long way, and how could they possibly do that? We'll just come on out. And our ride leader for that one, Kathy Dollar, she in fact used to work with the Boys and Girls Club to help teach kids, probably middle schoolers, to ride bikes and to ride bikes safely. And she would work with Terry Escuchin, who's also in the club, teach these kids to ride and do some training with them. And then they would ride normally in one of probably the 30-mile ride in the Tour de Frederick when it came around in the summer. So she's particularly good and attentive, and because she's a former school teacher, she's very, very, very conscientious about making sure that everybody is getting the proper attention and behaving themselves and not getting left behind.
Very cool. Very cool. And I want to thank you both for coming on. I know that you guys got to get ready for your meeting and get things going. And I will put the links to your website on this so people can go check you guys out. And hopefully they'll come at least give it a try. Like I'm interested in coming out sometime. I got to get my bike fixed up again. And
there you go. Well, there's a few good bike shops in town, so you can. Yes. That's not really a limitation. And we also, of course, have a Facebook page, so you can look us up. You can just look us up on Facebook too to see what's going on.
Great. So I'll put all those links down so people can check you out and start following you and figuring out when they can come out. Because I think that, like I said, it for me it brings back the whole going out with your friends and riding, and that was always like just for me from the time I was like 5 till I was like even like 17, 18. I was riding my bike even when I had a car, but then suddenly going to college, I sort of fell out of that. And, but again, thank you both for coming on. I've enjoyed this, and hopefully you guys would be willing to come back sometime. If you got special events coming up that you want to tell people about, I'd love to have you on again and tell us what's going on and where they can meet up and whatever's happening. And,
Sounds good. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Oh, yeah, no problem. And for those of you watching, listening, or however you found us, thank you for stopping by. And remember to, as always, stay safe and keep searching.
The Fedora Fans. Check out fedoracrt.com today.